All right, great. We are Team Reservoir, and our goal is to bring higher education into Web3. Tell you a little bit about myself and my co-founder, Julian. I've got just shy of 10 years in enterprise software sales experience, and Julian just shy of that in real estate investment. We bring a really diverse background and kind of skill set to our project here, to our company. We do have some commonalities. We are both MBA candidates at Georgetown, rising second years. We both have a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and we both look fantastic in black t-shirts. When I first met Julian, one of the things that we initially bonded over was the terrible experience we had applying to grad school. Specifically, one of the most challenging ones was obtaining copies of our diplomas and transcripts for our application. We kept asking ourselves, why don't we just have digital copies of our records? We have digital receipts for airplane tickets, for t-shirts. Why don't we have it for probably one of the biggest investments we'll make in our lifetime? After graduating, student records are shipped off to third-party providers to manage diplomas and transcripts. But by outsourcing this responsibility, universities essentially sever the relationships that they have with students. Not only does this impact students, this disconnect, but it also impacts universities. This disconnect here really makes students effectively get taxed when having to certify their transcripts. And in addition to that, universities struggle to really connect with and activate their alumni base at a pretty alarming rate. The average alumni giving rate nationally is 8%, which really equates to around a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar, frankly, shortfall for the operating budgets of thousands of universities across the country. This is the problem that we're trying to solve. Our vision is that upon graduation, students will be issued a digital NFT diploma that exists forever on a blockchain. By creating that permanent digital relationship with students, universities can now have a new way to activate and engage with their alumni base like never before. In addition to that, because it exists on a blockchain, some of the very core elements are authenticity and proof of ownership. Our vision is to now allow students to essentially self-verify themselves, whether that's applying to university, applying to a job, even potentially verifying their own credentials on LinkedIn or other platforms. We feel like we can shift the narrative of an NFT away from a monetary value to one of utility. By creating this kind of network effect, we really think this could be a tool for universities to then understand more about their alumni base once they leave the four walls of the university, and come up with new programs and campaigns to further activate that alumni base. We recognize this is a pretty grand vision, and it's going to take a lot of work to really change the mindset of folks around NFTs, from cartoons to actual legitimate documents. But we knew we needed to start somewhere. And that's where we're at today. We're kind of in this issuing phase of our journey, where we needed to get a university to say, you know what, we believe in this vision and this approach, and we'll do a pilot. And we've had some traction there, and that's what Julian will touch on now.
Yeah, so as Amy mentioned, we got Georgetown McDonough to sort of buy into our vision that James has expanded on, and they were our pilot, our test case for this idea. So in May, we launched a pilot program with MSB's undergraduate program and delivered 350 NFTs to the graduating class of 2020, who came back to campus to officially walk after having their senior year derailed by COVID. And currently, this is the largest NFT program implemented by a university to date. So we're off to a pretty promising start with our thesis here. And I think what's really important to note is that we actually have revenue already. We're really proud about that fact, especially as an early stage startup, the fact that we already have revenue. So that's the first piece of traction. The second thing is we found two really interesting facts during our pilot. First is that we discovered that over 70% of the participating alumni already own crypto or NFTs. So we're seeing that this younger generation is absolutely using this technology. And secondly, we kind of validated our thesis here in that it was extremely difficult to reach these alumni, even though they had only graduated just 2 years ago. The alumni office helped us and provided us with a roster of the class's school email addresses, but many of them were already barely checking it. It was not something that they were, tapping into at all, really. So we already found that it was this link between alumni and their alma maters is already, it's already broken. And then lastly, we had some pretty great follow-up meetings with Dean Grant, who was our shepherd throughout this whole process. She is the associate dean for the undergraduate program at MSB. And we have a verbal commitment to do this again in 2023 and build something even more special this time around. So we're really excited about that. And then we can go to the next slide. So learning. So at the start of June, at the start of SLI, we had 3 primary goals. First, we were struggling with how to approach our growth strategy and really wanted to solidify it. Our ultimate vision is to build a comprehensive platform that universities can access through their internal systems, but neither James or I have the technical chops or, frankly, the requisite capital right now to build such a platform. So we, with our mentors, kind of came to the decision that we would continue acting as a consulting firm in the short term and focus solely on diplomas until we have secured more commitments from universities, and then eventually use that traction to secure funding to build a full service platform that is capable of creating more than just diplomas. Secondly, we wanted to assemble a database of universities so that we could begin developing somewhat of a proprietary scoring system, a ranking system to help guide our outreach to schools. We are incorporating different statistics, everything from the endowment size of universities to their alumni participation rates and a bunch of different metrics. And we actually brought on an intern for the summer. So he's a current undergraduate student at MSB, a rising sophomore with a serious passion for crypto. We're finding that a lot of the undergrads have a passion for crypto, so that's great. And he's been helping us put together this database, and we've been moving along really well on this front. And then lastly, we aim to come up with a comprehensive messaging strategy. Amy actually touched on it earlier on in the day, but every single school we connect with will have very different needs and goals. It's going to be a very varied process as to what's our message for each school and each university. It's going to be completely different. So we're still working on this and how we're going to nail it down, but this is something we're really focused on working on in July and August for the remaining of the summer. And what's next? So these are kind of the 4 steps that we see Reservoir taking on over the next few months. So we want to finalize our value prop, our messaging and marketing. And then once we have that nailed down, which should be pretty soon, our plan is to start pitching Reservoir to the other schools on campus at Georgetown. And then from there, hopefully we sign up the rest of Georgetown, and then we can move on to a few more universities to really validate our thesis and this business model. And then once we have that kind of traction and that kind of success, go out and raise some funding to build this platform and really grow from there. Lastly, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We have our social handles there for you guys to check out. We're pretty active on Twitter, still gearing up the Instagram, but expect to see more from us on our social pages. And if anyone in the audience knows any investors focused on the blockchain or edtech space, or has connections with administrators at universities across the country, please pass them our way so we can tell them a little bit more about Reservoir. And I know we're the last team, so I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, Jeff, Ben, Amy, and our mentors, Rick and Brian. They were extremely helpful. And thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Wow. I've just been so overwhelmed with the
confidence in which you present that opportunity. You can see the future, and we're going along on that journey with you. And so we now have comments, and I think it's Brian, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So I know that we're late into the evening here, and so I'll be brief, but really, Rick Robinson and I really enjoyed working with James and Julian on this project. I think, a few quick comments I think that are interesting here. So one of the things that I think is really promising about this business is it's a really targeted market that they're going after, the Reservoir is going after. Higher education, it's a known market. There's 4,000 schools. There's a lot of TAM. That's 4,000 schools in the country, 20,000 globally. We know that most universities are not super tech savvy when it comes to the metaverse, at least in terms of how they're thinking about alumni engagement. And so the other thing, having worked in higher ed for many years, it's a very easy market to target. There's lists, there's universities, many universities act in similar ways to one another. There's also a lot of companies who've done really, really well in that space that they can follow. They can try to replicate their pathway. Blackboard, started by a Georgetown alum. You think about Blackbaud, Salesforce.org, I should say, their higher ed division, Instructure, Pearson, the list goes on. And so the other thing that is really interesting is they have picked a segment to go after, which is the alumni relations group, which, if you think about it, is the exact opposite of a cost center. They are the ones who are actually thinking they're the primary driver of revenues for the university. And you think about the stats that they shared and how dismal that is. I think I also saw a stat that 95% of university giving comes from 5% of the alumni base. And so you think about the opportunity to change the financial dynamics there, and you've got a pretty big marketplace. Another thing that I think we love about this business is, how cool is it that they founded the business with their first customer? What a great foundational story to be able to really recognize that there is something here, and what better than starting with your first customer being Georgetown University. Love the idea of going after the rest of the colleges and then really expanding from there. One of the things I think that the guys we've chatted about quite a bit is that understanding and really teasing out the value proposition fully is going to be important. And so, as an example, this class of the previous class who received these NFTs, getting some of their feedback, getting an understanding of what they're doing with those, how it's making them feel differently about the relationship they have with the university, I think is going to be really key to sort of paying off the promise of what they can do. If they're truly going to be the company that is going to help to dramatically change how universities raise money and engage a digital native group of alums, I think that's going to be pretty important to figure out. I think the other thing that is really key for these guys, and James, you touched on it, excuse me, Julian touched on it at the end, is who are they as a company and what are they going to become? And I think that's fine to be one thing now, but having eyes on what you will become. And so over time, history would tell us that turning into a product or a platform company that has a SaaS model is going to be probably highly more lucrative than being a consulting company. It's also going to help them develop a core set of technology that they can build a moat around, and really then monetize and become specialists. And so, the other thing that's interesting about this market, it is changing constantly. And I guarantee that, there's other organizations, other groups that are thinking about this. So speed to market and really thinking about developing that technology is going to be critically important. Last thing I'll say is pricing model. Could there be some opportunities whereby, as opposed to just sort of taking a fee to build something, that these guys can get in on the action, and it actually can be a rev share? That's where the revenue model can really, really take off. And so I think that's going to be an interesting thing for these guys to track. And so last thing I'll say, best wishes to these guys. Hopefully this is the next great business founded at Georgetown, like many of the others that we've heard this evening. So it's been a pleasure, I think, for Rick and I to work with these guys. And thanks again. And I'll send it back to Jeff and Ben and Amy.
Thanks so much, Brian. I love when I hear from all of the cohort how valuable the insights have been from all the mentors. And I know from James and Julian, you hit the mark. So thank you so much for that.